I have another video under musical portraits on my website that talks a little bit about the very beginning of how I started doing musical portraits. That's not really what I want to talk about in this video. In this, video, I just had a little almond butter with honey. And I might burp a little bit. When I first became clear that I could possibly charge money for creating a piece of music for a person who might want one, I made the price $250. That was just what occurred to me that I might be able to charge. And in fact, I traded for Pilates lessons for one of the very first musical portraits. That one turned out to be Men Under the Night Sky, which is a beautiful piece of music, in my opinion. By the way, I love these pieces. I listen to them, I go and listen to them and go, wow, that was really good. I don't know how I did that. So I started out at that price, and I don't know how many I did at that price, but pretty soon I had decided to go on the road in a van. I called Van Gogh because it just had a general impression of where it was going. And my idea was to do house concerts where I would play these musical portraits, the pieces I had composed, and do some poetry. And what happened is people just started signing up for these compositions left and right, because when they heard the story about them and they could feel the connection with the people that had commissioned them, they wanted to have one for their mother or their wife or their husband, or I've done them for a person's dog. I've done them for a person's land that they built a house on. I've done them for a bear that became famous in Ojai, California. Sad to say, a martyred bear. So many different reasons for doing a musical portrait. But at that point, I realized I needed to charge $500. And what I was doing was stopping in between the concerts that I was doing all over the country and composing these musical portraits. I had a little MacBook and some recording software, and that's how I did these pieces. And the pieces on The Irrational Quest for Beauty and When Your Life Becomes Music are all some of those first musical portraits. And I still am stunned to this day at how good they are, because I did not study composition. I was thoroughly immersed in classical music, and I did study theory, and I have looked at scores, and there's a whole history to how it would be possible to compose the kind of pieces. I had the great honor of jamming a bunch with Matt Gaden, an amazing R&B guitar player, artist, singer-songwriter in Nashville. I was in his band. But when I decided that this was what I was going to do, I just began to be able to do it and get better at it. So at a certain point, one of my friends at that time, who was an economist, said, "You have more demand than you have supply, so you need to raise the price to $1,000, and I will be the first one to commission a piece for $1,000 for my birthday, my 60th birthday." And that is the piece called grace, gayatry, and gratitude. I believe it's on When Your Life Becomes Music, and it was composed in a cabana in Miami Beach, right by the ocean, for Gayatri, who was an incredibly elegant woman who had a very, very interesting history, and it was played for her when she passed, that piece. So at that point, the price was $1,000. It stayed at $1,000 for a while, even after I came back, and I was never really pushing this idea of let's compose a musical portrait. People would just get wind of the fact that I do this, and they would say, okay, would you do this, and how much would it cost? And at that point I would just say $1,000, and that's what I did it for. And then I sort of dropped into a labyrinth of people who were associated with two teachers, spiritual teachers, who, at least for a while, made their residence outside of town here. And the followers of this couple were very well-to-do, and there were a number of them that wanted musical portraits. I performed in gatherings that were organized by these teachers, and that led to the best commission that I ever got, which was from a person who lives in Palo Alto, who wanted a gift for his wife for her 50th birthday. And as it turned out, he was a violinist, she was a pianist, his son was a cellist, and his daughter was a violinist. And he wanted a piano quartet to be written, a score and parts, and a video of some musicians playing the piece, so he could present all of that to her on her 50th birthday. And that was an incredible opportunity. And he was the one who suggested that he should pay $5,000 for this. By the time I figured out how much time I put into creating this, I realized it probably should have been like $8,000 or something, but it makes, as my mother used to say, it makes no never mind. I was so grateful to have the opportunity to actually write out music for an ensemble. I hadn't done that. None of my pieces are transcribed. Most of my pieces are not transcribed. So, and it's always been a dream of mine for these pieces to be played live by an orchestra or by some sort of ensemble, whatever the group of players are that the piece was written for, which I have never been able to realize because it takes a certain amount of time to do that, and I have never had the leisure or luxury of being able to do that. So at this point, it seemed as if the best price for a musical portrait was around $2,000. I did a couple at $1,500. I did a few at $2,000. And I really kind of thought that was the price. And maybe it is the price. I've tracked very carefully the amount of time that I spend on these things, and it's worth the money because there's a lot of time that goes into it. And yet, I need to make a transition from mostly being a performer of pieces that I occasionally compose and keep adding to my repertoire to a person who is mostly a composer and is able to perform, perhaps with the help of other musicians, some of those compositions that I create. Because I have realized that I personally am not going to be able to keep performing at least in the same quantity as I have been in the past. And certainly I want whatever performances I do to be at the same quality that I'm accustomed to being able to deliver. So I have made the decision for now that if a person is willing to support me to the tune of $10 a month, I will make available to that person a massive discount on the cost of a musical portrait, such that, as I said, for now, they can pay $500 and I will go to work to create a piece of music for them. I know I can do that. I would rather have more work, more of a pipeline of assignments for now, up to a point. I imagine that that commission cost will once again go up. And I don't know what the market is going to turn out to be for these pieces, because I'll be spreading the word about them. I'll be on YouTube, I'll be on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I'll be, as ubiquitous as I possibly can be, and we'll see how all of that develops. The purpose of this particular informational video is to let you know that this form of music has a history. The last album of musical portraits is on Spotify. The album Brothers and Sisters of the Soul is also on Spotify, so it's kind of beautiful. You can have a musical portrait and then go to Spotify and listen to it as part of a playlist. So I hope you consider taking advantage of that. In any event, I hope you consider getting a subscription, because if you do get a subscription, all of the new work that I'm producing, you'll be able to hear before anyone else. I'll release it to the members at my website before anyone else. And I also am making available Zoom access. In other words, if anyone just wants to talk about music and their thoughts about my work, they have feedback, maybe they have ideas, perhaps ideas of how to spread the word, maybe they just are curious about how I go about what's my process, you can feel free to contact me and I will be happy to set up a time to talk for subscribers, because unless there's some kind of real project involved, I'm not going to really have time to just talk to everybody about everything. I got to focus. I'm going to have, a couple hours of composing time solid every morning to manifest these beautiful works of heartful music. I think that's the story. That's the story for now. Thank you for listening. I'll talk to you all later on.